The sky above Prime had always been beautiful. For 3,000 years, the people had looked up at their twin moons and felt peace. Their world was gentle. Their people were gentle. They had never known war, never built weapons, never raised their voices in anger. But now the sky was full of death. Ambassador Telos stood at the great window of the council tower and watched the dark shapes move across the stars. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. The bioships looked like living nightmares, their hulls made of grown bone and stretched skin. They blocked out the light of the moons and cast shadows over the sleeping cities below. Telos was old, even by standards. His light patches, the bioluminescent markings that covered his thin body, had begun to fade with age. Once they had glowed bright blue. Now they flickered like dying candles. He had served as ambassador for over 200 years. He had helped end disputes between a dozen species. He had never failed. Until now. "Ambassador," said a soft voice behind him, "the council is waiting." Telos turned to see a young communications officer with bright green light patches. She was barely 40 years old, still a child by standards. Her large, dark eyes were filled with fear, but she held herself steady. "Thank you," Telos said. His voice was tired. "Tell them I am coming." The council chamber was quiet when Telos entered. The 12 members of the High Council sat in their curved seats, their light patches dim with worry. They were scientists, artists, philosophers. They were not leaders of war. They did not even have a word for war in their ancient language. They had borrowed the word from other species, never thinking they would need it. "What news from the Galactic Concord?" asked Elder Myra, the oldest member of the council. Her voice was barely a whisper. Telos felt his heart sink. Yes, they had two hearts, both of them breaking in this moment. "They will not help us," he said. The chamber erupted in soft cries of despair. Light patches flickered wildly as emotions overcame the council members. One of them, a young male named Solon, rose from his seat. "But we are members of the Concord," Solon said. "We have served them for 3,000 years. We have ended their disputes, healed their wounds, built bridges between enemies." "And they thank us for our service," Telos said bitterly. "But they cannot spare military assets at this time. They recommend negotiation." "Negotiation," Elder Myra laughed, but there was no joy in it. "The do not negotiate, the consume." She was right. Everyone knew she was right. They were a hive species, driven by hunger and expansion. They had already destroyed a dozen worlds. They took what they wanted and left nothing behind but bones and ashes. They wanted Prime for its crystals. Deep beneath the surface of the planet lay vast deposits of resonance crystals, rare minerals that could power starships for centuries. They needed these crystals for their expansion. They did not care that 5 billion lived on this world. They did not care about anything but feeding their endless hunger. "Then we must prepare to die with dignity," said another council member. His light patches had gone completely dark, a sign of total despair. "No," Telos said firmly. "We must not give up. There must be someone who will help us." But even as he said the words, he did not believe them. The Conquered had abandoned them. The other species were too afraid of them to act. They had no weapons, no ships capable of fighting. They were alone. Appeared at the door of the chamber. Her light patches were glowing brightly, which surprised Telos. Fear usually dimmed the light, but she looked almost excited. "Ambassador," she said, "I found something, a signal, a species that joined the Conquered just 5 cycles ago. They are on the edge of known space, a small world called Earth." Earth? Telos had never heard of it. "What do we know of them?" "Almost nothing," admitted. "They are called humans. They are young, very young. They only achieved faster-than-light travel recently. But Ambassador, their response time to Conquered communications is the fastest of any species, and they have never ignored a distress call." Telos looked at the council. They looked back at him with dim, hopeless eyes. What choice did they have? "Send the distress call," he said. Tell them everything. Tell them we are dying." Nodded and ran from the chamber. Telos turned back to the window and watched the ships circle overhead like hungry birds waiting for their prey to stop moving. He did not expect much from this Earth. How could a young species from a small world on the edge of nowhere help against the swarm? But hope was all he had left, and he would hold on to it until the very end. 3 hours passed, then 6, then 12. The sent their demands: surrender, open the planet, give them access to the crystal mines. In return, they would allow them to leave. They would have one standard day to evacuate 5 billion people. It was impossible, and everyone knew it. They were not offering mercy. They were offering the appearance of mercy so they could claim they had given a choice. Telos sat in his office, staring at the communication console, waiting for an answer that he knew would never come. The humans probably could not even reach Prime in time. The distance was too great. And what could they do anyway? They were young. They were small. They were nothing. The console beeped. Telos looked at the screen. A message had arrived from the Sol system, from Earth. His thin fingers trembled as he opened it. The message was short, just one line, just a few words. But as Telos read them, his fading light patches suddenly blazed bright blue for the first time in years. The message said, "We're coming, hold on." Telos read it again, and again, and again. "We're coming, hold on." He did not know what these humans were. He did not know if they could truly help. But in that moment, for the first time since they arrived, Ambassador Telos felt something he had forgotten how to feel. He felt hope. He called for immediately. When she arrived, he showed her the message. Her eyes went wide. "They answered," she breathed. "They actually answered." "Yes," Telos said. "Now we must do our part. We must hold on." Outside the window, the ships continued their patrol, blocking out the stars. They had given the one day to surrender. They expected fear and submission. They expected easy prey. They had no idea what was coming for them. Somewhere in the darkness of space, from a small blue world on the edge of the galaxy, humanity had received a cry for help, and humanity was answering. They did not know much about humans. They did not know about Earth's violent history, its brutal evolution, its endless wars. They did not know that humans had survived ice ages and plagues and nuclear weapons. They did not know that humans were born fighters, that their planet had forged them in fire and pain and death. They did not know that Earth was classified as a Class 12, a place so dangerous that most species refused to even visit. They only knew that someone had answered their call. And sometimes that is enough. 3 days had passed since the humans sent their message. 3 days of fear. 3 days of waiting. 3 days of watching the ships grow bolder in the sky. Ambassador Telos had not slept. He could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the dark shapes of the bioships. He heard the clicking sounds of communication. He imagined his people burning. The deadline had passed, but they had not attacked yet. They were playing with their food, Telos realized. They enjoyed the fear. They enjoyed watching the scramble and beg for help that would never come. Or so they thought. Ambassador said, running into his office. Her light patches were flashing rapidly, a sign of extreme emotion. "Something is happening. Our sensors are detecting something strange." "What kind of strange?" Telos asked, rising from his chair. "I do not know how to describe it," said. "You need to see it yourself." They hurried to the main observation deck of the council tower. The room was filled with scientists and officers, all staring at the massive display screen on the wall. Their light patches were dim with confusion. "There," said the chief sensor officer, pointing at the screen. "Do you see it?" Telos looked. At first he saw nothing unusual, just the darkness of space beyond the blockade. But then he noticed it, a distortion, a ripple in the fabric of space itself. "What is that?" he asked. "We do not know," the sensor officer admitted. "Our instruments cannot explain it. It appears to be some kind of faster-than-light transit signature, but the energy readings are unlike anything we have ever seen. It is massive, Ambassador. Whatever is coming through is massive. Telos felt his heart begin to beat faster. Could it be? Could the humans actually have come? They noticed it too. Their ships began to move, shifting their positions to face the distortion. Communications chatter between the bioships increased rapidly. They were nervous, Telos realized. For the first time, this seemed uncertain. The distortion grew larger. The ripple in space became a tear. Light began to pour through, harsh and brilliant, forcing them to shield their sensitive eyes. And then space opened, and they came through. Telos stopped breathing. He had expected help, perhaps a few ships, perhaps a small rescue fleet. He had hoped for a miracle, but he had prepared himself for disappointment. This was beyond anything he had imagined. Ships poured through the tear in space. Not 10, not 50, not 100. They kept coming and coming, filling the space between the stars, their hulls gleaming in the light of sun. "How many?" Telos whispered. The sensor officer's voice shook as she answered. 437 warships, Ambassador, all of them armed, all of them moving in perfect formation. 437. They had never built a single warship in their entire history. They had brought 600 bioships to conquer them. And here were the humans, a species they had never even heard of a week ago, with an armada that made them gasp in disbelief. The ships were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. They were angular, built of metal and composite materials, their surfaces covered with weapons that made the sensors scream warnings. These were not ships built for exploration or trade. These were ships built for one purpose only: war. At the head of the formation flew the largest vessel, a massive warship that dwarfed everything around it. Its name was painted on the hull in a language they did not recognize: Eternal Dawn. On the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, Admiral Park stood with his hands clasped behind his back, staring at the... He was 63 years old, with gray-streaked black hair and calm, dark eyes. He had served in the Terran Defense Coalition for over 40 years. He had fought pirates, rebels, and hostile aliens. He had never lost a battle. He did not intend to start now. "Status report," he said quietly. "All ships have completed transit, Admiral," replied Captain, his tactical commander. She was a woman in her 40s, sharp-featured and precise in every movement. "The fleet is in formation and awaiting your orders." "Weapon systems are online and ready," added Commander, the weapons officer. He was a large man, built like a mountain, with hands that could crush bone but preferred to operate targeting systems. "Opening communication channels now, sir," said Lieutenant Bay, the communications officer. She was the youngest on the bridge, barely 30, but her skills with communications technology were unmatched. Admiral Park nodded. He looked at the ships on the... There were many of them, yes. Their bioships looked fearsome with their bone hulls and organic weapons. In another time, against another species, they might have been terrifying. But they had never faced humans. "Open a channel to the fleet," Admiral Park ordered. "Channel open, sir," Lieutenant Bay confirmed. Admiral Park stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was calm, almost gentle, but there was steel beneath the gentleness. "This is Admiral Park of the Terran Defense Coalition, commanding the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. I am speaking to the forces currently blockading Prime. You have exactly 1 standard hour to withdraw from space. There will be no second warning." For a long moment there was silence. Then the Hive Commander responded. The voice was harsh, clicking, translated through universal communication protocols. "Human," the Hive Commander said, "you are far from your little world. You are young. You are soft. You do not belong here. Take your small fleet and leave, or we will consume you along with the..." Admiral Park's expression did not change. He simply looked at Captain and said, "They do not know what we are." Captain almost smiled. "No, sir, they do not." The admiral turned back to the Hive commander. "I will explain this once. They asked for our help. We do not abandon those who ask for our help. You will withdraw or you will be destroyed. The choice is yours." The Hive commander laughed, a horrible clicking sound that made Lieutenant Bay wince. "We have conquered 100 systems, human. We have devoured species older and stronger than you. What can you possibly do against us?" Admiral Park closed the channel without another word. He turned to his crew. Every eye on the bridge was fixed on him. These men and women had followed him across the stars. They had trained for this moment. They were ready. "Begin the countdown," the admiral said, "and prepare to show them what Earth sends to war." On Prime, Ambassador Telos watched the human fleet spread out across the sky. He watched the ships scramble to reorganize their formation. He watched history being made. Stood beside him, her light patches glowing bright with wonder. "Ambassador," she said softly, "who are these humans? What kind of beings answer a stranger's call with 400 warships?" Telos shook his head slowly. "I do not know, but I believe we are about to find out." Above them, the human ships waited in perfect silence. The countdown had begun. The hour was ticking away, and somewhere in the darkness of space, the Hive commander was about to learn a lesson that would be taught to the entire galaxy. Never threaten those under human protection. The clock continued to count down. 50 minutes, 40, 30. They did not move. They would learn their mistake soon enough. While the clock counted down toward battle, Ambassador Telos received an invitation that surprised him. The humans wanted a delegation aboard their flagship. They wanted to show them something important. Telos chose to go himself, along with young Solon, the council member who had spoken so passionately about their alliance with the conquered. A small shuttle carried them up through the darkness, past the circling ships, toward the massive human vessel called Eternal Dawn. When the shuttle docked and the doors opened, Telos and Solon stepped into a different world. The inside of the human ship was hard and metallic. There were no soft curves, no gentle lights, no comfortable spaces. Everything was built for purpose, for function, for war. The walls were lined with pipes and wires. The air smelled of oil and electricity. Sounds echoed through the corridors, harsh and mechanical. But what struck Telos most were the humans themselves. They were everywhere, moving through the ship with purpose and energy. They walked fast, spoke loud, laughed at things Telos could not understand. They bumped into each other in the narrow hallways and simply kept moving. One of them tripped on a loose panel and hit the floor hard. Telos gasped, expecting serious injury, but the human simply cursed, stood up, and continued walking as if nothing had happened. "They are so solid," Solon whispered, "so heavy." It was true. Humans were dense, thick-bodied creatures. Their bones were heavy, their muscles thick. A single human probably weighed 3 times as much as of the same height. They moved like they were used to being pulled down by some invisible force, their legs strong, their steps firm. A young human female approached them. She was small for a human, with dark hair pulled back from her face and quick, intelligent eyes. "Ambassador Telos, I'm Lieutenant Bay, Communications Officer. Admiral Park asked me to welcome you aboard and answer any questions you might have." Telos bowed slightly. "Thank you, Lieutenant. We are grateful for your help, but I must admit we do not understand. Why did you come? Why did you bring so many ships? We have nothing to offer you." Lieutenant Bay smiled. It was a strange expression, showing teeth, but Telos was learning that this was how humans expressed friendship. "You asked for help," she said simply. "That's enough." She led them through the ship toward the bridge. Along the way, Telos saw things that confused him deeply. He saw humans exercising in a large room, lifting heavy weights over their heads, running on machines that went nowhere, fighting each other with padded hands. They were sweating, breathing hard, and they looked happy. "Why do they hurt themselves?" Solon asked. "Training," Lieutenant Bay explained. Humans need to stay strong. Our bodies require constant work or they become weak. Your bodies become weak if you do not exercise. Telos was amazed. Bodies simply maintain themselves. They did not require such brutal maintenance. Everything about us requires work, Lieutenant Bay said with a slight shrug. We have to exercise. We have to eat multiple times a day. We have to sleep for hours every night. We get sick constantly. We break bones. We tear muscles. We are, honestly, very poorly designed creatures. She said this cheerfully, as if it were a joke. Telos did not understand. They reached the bridge where Admiral Park was waiting. He stood straight and tall despite his age, his hands still clasped behind his back. His eyes were kind but hard, like polished stone. "Ambassador Telos," he said, "welcome aboard the Eternal Dawn. I wanted you to understand what you have called to your aid." He gestured to a large display screen. Lieutenant Bay touched a few controls, and images began to appear. "This is Earth," Admiral Park said, "our." The image showed a blue and green planet covered in white clouds. It looked beautiful, peaceful even. But the Admiral began to explain, and with each word, Telos felt his understanding of humanity shift. "The Galactic Concord classifies on a scale of 1 to 10, Admiral Park said. Class 1 is gentle, safe, easy for life to develop. Most species come from Class 2 or 3 worlds. The is Class 1. He paused. Earth is Class 12. 12? Solon's light patches flickered with confusion. But you said the scale only goes to 10. They had to extend it, Lieutenant Bay said quietly. When they discovered Earth, they had to create new classifications. The images changed. Telos saw massive waves of water crashing against rocky shores. He saw mountains that vomited fire and smoke into the sky. He saw the ground splitting open, swallowing buildings whole. He saw storms so large they could cover entire continents, spinning with winds that could tear apart any structure they had ever built. Our planet has extreme axial tilt, Admiral Park explained. This causes what we call seasons. Parts of our world freeze solid for months at a time. Other parts become so hot that nothing can survive without shelter. More images. Creatures with massive teeth. Creatures with poison in their blood. Creatures that hunted in packs, that hid in shadows, that killed with cold efficiency. Every environment on Earth has apex predators, the Admiral continued. The oceans, the forests, the deserts, even the frozen poles. Our ancestors had to fight to survive every single day. How did your species survive? Telos breathed. By being more dangerous than anything else, Admiral Park said simply. Humans are persistence predators. We do not chase our prey with speed. We chase them until they collapse from exhaustion. We can run for hours without stopping. We can heal from injuries that would kill most species. We adapted to every environment from frozen ice to burning desert. We survived ice ages, plagues, asteroid impacts. We survived ourselves. The images changed again. Now Telos saw humans fighting other humans, wars that stretched across continents, weapons that could level cities in a single blast, ships that sailed across endless oceans, machines that flew through the sky like birds of metal. We have been fighting since the moment we became aware, Admiral Park said. We fought animals, we fought nature, we fought each other. For thousands of years we made war against ourselves. We developed weapons that could destroy our entire world, and still we survived. He turned to face Telos directly. His eyes were steady, calm, without fear. They think they are predators, Admiral Park said. They have conquered 100 systems. They have destroyed species older than humanity. They think they are the most dangerous things in this galaxy. He smiled. It was not a friendly smile. They have never met a... Telos understood now. He understood why the humans had come so quickly with so many ships. He understood why they showed no fear. There were hunters, yes, but so were humans. And humans had been forged in a furnace that made them look like children playing at war. "Lieutenant," Admiral Park said, "how much time remains?" 12 minutes, sir." The Admiral nodded. "Return our guests to their shuttle. They will not withdraw. They are too proud, too hungry. They will attack and we will respond." He looked at Telos one final time. "Watch from the surface, Ambassador. Watch and see what happens when someone threatens those under human protection." As the shuttle carried Telos and Solon back toward Prime, Solon finally spoke. "I am glad they are on our side," he said quietly. Telos could only nod. Above them, the human fleet waited in silence. The countdown continued, and somewhere in the darkness, the Hive commander prepared to make the worst mistake of his existence. He was about to learn what we're truly made of. The hour ended, the clock reached 0, and they did not move. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn and watched the enemy fleet through the 600 bioships, all of them holding position, all of them confident in their superior numbers. The Hive commander had made his choice. "So be it. All ships battle stations," Admiral Park said calmly. "Captain, you may begin." Captain stood at the tactical display, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. She had spent 20 years preparing for moments like this. She had studied every battle in human history, from ancient cavalry charges to modern space warfare. She knew exactly how to break an enemy fleet. "Formation Delta," she ordered. "Destroyer wings move to flanking positions. Cruisers hold the center. The Eternal Dawn leads the spearhead." The human fleet shifted like a living thing. 437 ships moved in perfect coordination, each one knowing exactly where to go and what to do. There was no hesitation, no confusion, just cold, professional efficiency. On Prime, Ambassador Telos watched from the observation deck. Beside him stood Solon and dozens of other, all of them staring at the sky with wide eyes. The human ships began to glow as their engines powered up. "It is beginning," whispered. They attacked first. Their bioships surged forward, releasing clouds of organic missiles and acid projectiles. The Hive commander was confident. He had 600 ships against 400. He had conquered 100 systems. What could these small, soft humans possibly do? He was about to find out. "Commander," Admiral Park said, "show them what Earth sends to war." Commander grinned. His massive hands moved across the weapons console with surprising grace. All around the human fleet, weapons systems powered up to full capacity. "All ships," Commander announced, "open fire." Space exploded into light. The human rail guns fired first. These weapons used magnetic fields to accelerate tungsten rounds to incredible speeds, fractions of the speed of light itself. The rounds tore through the first wave of ships like paper, punching holes through their bone hulls and organic systems. Bioships that had taken centuries to grow died in seconds. Then came the plasma lances. Beams of superheated matter cut across the darkness, slicing through formations with surgical precision. The organic ships had no defense against such concentrated energy. They burned, their living tissue cooking and dying in moments. They tried to respond. Their acid projectiles splashed against human shields, eating away at energy barriers but not penetrating. Their organic missiles were intercepted by point defense systems, shot down before they could reach their targets. Everything they threw at the humans was stopped cold. But it was the human movement that truly shocked the galaxy. Human ships did not fly like other ships. They did not move in careful, gentle arcs that protected their crews from acceleration forces. They moved like angry insects, changing direction instantly, accelerating at speeds that should have killed everyone aboard. The watching could not understand. Such maneuvers should turn the crew into liquid. The forces involved should shatter bones and rupture organs. How were the humans surviving? The answer was simple: they were built for it. Inside the human ships, the crews strained against their harnesses as the G-forces pushed and pulled at their bodies. Their teeth clenched, their muscles tightened. Their hearts pumped harder to force blood to their brains. It hurt. It was not comfortable, but their bodies had been evolved to handle stress, pressure, and pain. Captain directed the battle with cold precision. Her eyes never left the tactical display. She saw patterns in the chaos, opportunities in the destruction. She gave orders, and the fleet obeyed, and the died. Enemy flagship identified, Lieutenant Bay announced. The Hive Commander's vessel bearing 347. Show me, Admiral Park said. They zoomed in on a massive bioship, larger than any other in the fleet. It was covered in bone, armor, and organic weapons, a living fortress grown over centuries. The Hive Commander sat somewhere inside, directing the battle, still believing he could win. Commander, the Admiral said, prepare the main cannon. Commander's grin widened. With pleasure, sir. The Eternal Dawn was not just a battleship. It was the flagship of the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet, carrying weapons that made other warships look like toys. At its heart was the main cannon, a massive rail gun capable of firing a projectile the size of a small building at speeds that imagination. Target locked, Commander announced, firing main cannon. The Eternal Dawn shuddered as the weapon discharged. A streak of light crossed the battlefield in less than a heartbeat. The Hive Commander's flagship had no time to evade, no time to respond. The projectile hit the bioship dead center. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the organic vessel simply came apart, its hull shattering, its internal systems exploding outward in a fountain of alien flesh and bone. The Hive Commander and the thousands of aboard died instantly. The effect on the fleet was immediate. The Hive species operated through a collective intelligence centered on the Hive Commander. Without him, they became confused, disorganized. Their attacks became random, uncoordinated. All ships advance, Admiral Park ordered. Press the attack, do not let them regroup. The human fleet surged forward. What had been a battle became a massacre. They tried to flee. Their ships turned and ran, trying to reach the edge of the system where they could engage their faster-than-light drives. But the human ships were faster, their weapons reaching across the darkness to destroy any bioship that tried to escape. In less than 2 hours, it was over. Of the 600 bioships that had blockaded Prime, only 47 survived. These remnants fled into deep space, carrying with them a message that would spread across the galaxy. Do not threaten those under human protection. On Prime, they watched in stunned silence as the human fleet destroyed their enemies. When the last ship disappeared into the darkness, the silence continued for a long moment. Then the cheering began. Light patches flared across the planet as millions of celebrated their salvation. They wept with joy, embraced each other, raised their thin arms toward the sky where the human ships still patrolled, standing guard over a world they had never seen before today. Ambassador Telos stood at the window, tears streaming down his aged face. He had sent a message into the darkness, hopping for help. He had expected nothing. Instead, he had received an armada. On the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, Admiral Park allowed himself a small smile. The battle was won. They were safe. His people had done what humans had always done best. They had protected those who could not protect themselves. Lieutenant Bay, he said, open a channel. Broadcast to all frequencies, all conquered frequencies, everything. Channel open, sir. Admiral Park stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was calm but hard as steel. This is Admiral Park of the Terran Defense Coalition. They are under human protection. Spread the word to every corner of this galaxy. If any species comes for them, if any species threatens any member of the conquered who asks for our help, they will not face diplomats. They will not face negotiators. He paused and his eyes grew cold. They will face Earth. The message went out across the stars, and the galaxy listened. 3 days after the battle, Ambassador Telos stood in the Garden of Peace, the most sacred place on Prime. Ancient trees glowed with soft bioluminescence, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of night-blooming flowers. For 3,000 years, this garden had been a place for quiet reflection, for meditation, for healing. Today, it would be a place for understanding. Admiral Park walked beside him, his boots crunching softly on the crystal pathway. The human looked out of place among the delicate gardens, his military uniform dark against the glowing plants, his solid body heavy where everything else was light. But there was a gentleness in his movements that surprised Telos. "Your world is beautiful," the admiral said quietly. "It was almost destroyed," Telos replied. "Without you, it would be ruins by now. Our people would be dead or scattered across the galaxy as refugees." They walked in silence for a moment. Human guards stood at a respectful distance, giving the two leaders privacy. Above them, human ships still patrolled the sky, a constant reminder that Prime was no longer defenseless. "I must ask you something," Telos finally said. "The question that burns in every mind across the galactic conquered. Why?" Admiral Park stopped walking. He looked up at the twin moons of his expression thoughtful. "Why did we come?" he asked. "Yes, we have nothing to offer you, we cannot pay you, we have no strategic value. The conquered itself refused to help us, and they are powerful, ancient, wealthy. You are young. You are far away. You owed us nothing. Why did you bring 400 ships to save a species you had never met?" The admiral was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but clear. "Because you asked for help." Telos waited for more, but the admiral seemed to think this was a complete answer. He shook his head slowly. "I do not understand. Surely there must be something more, some political reason, some economic benefit, some advantage we are not seeing." Admiral Park smiled. It was a sad smile, filled with memories that Telos could not read. "Let me tell you about my people," the admiral said. "About where we come from, about what made us who we are." He began to walk again, and Telos followed. "Humans have always known suffering," the admiral said. "Our planet tried to kill us from the moment we existed. Animals hunted us. Disease struck us down. The weather froze us and burned us. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. We were small and weak and fragile." He touched one of the glowing trees gently, his rough fingers careful against the delicate bark. "But we survived. We survived because we learned to work together. We learned that alone we were nothing, but together we could overcome anything. We formed families, tribes, nations. We protected each other. We died for each other. That bond, that connection, became the core of what it means to be human." "But we are not human," Telos said. "We are strangers." "You are alive," Admiral Park replied. "You are thinking, feeling beings who were suffering. That is enough." He stopped again and turned to face Telos directly. "In my culture, we have a word called. It is difficult to translate. It means a bond that forms between people simply through shared experience, through shared time, through shared existence. It is not logical. It does not require you to give anything in return. It simply is." The admiral's eyes were distant, remembering. "My grandparents lived through a terrible time in our history. Their country was invaded. Their people were enslaved. They knew hunger and fear and death, but they survived because others helped them. Strangers from across the ocean came to fight beside them, to die beside them, for no reason except that it was the right thing to do." "They were repaying a debt?" Telos asked. "No, they had no debt. They simply saw people suffering and chose to help. And because of their choice, my grandparents survived. My parents were born. I was born. Everything I am, everything my people have become, exists because strangers chose to help when they could have walked away." The admiral's voice grew stronger. "That is why we came, Ambassador. Because somewhere in the darkness of space, a voice called out for help. And we remembered what it meant to need help. We remembered what it meant to be saved by strangers. We remembered that the only way to survive is together." Telos felt his light patches begin to glow brighter as emotion filled him. He had asked why, and now he understood. The humans had not come for payment or advantage. They had come because that was who they were. Their suffering had not made them cruel. It had made them compassionate. "We will never forget this," Telos said. "They will remember humanity forever." "And humanity will remember Admiral Park replied. "You reached out to us. You trusted us. That trust means more than you know." They continued walking through the garden. Above them, the moons shone peacefully, no longer blocked by the dark shapes of ships. Later that day, Lieutenant Bay found young Solon in the shuttle bay. He was watching the human ships through a viewing window, his light patches flickering with wonder. "You look like you have questions," she said, standing beside him. "Many questions," Solon admitted, "too many to count." Lieutenant Bay smiled. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small data chip. "Before we leave, I wanted to give you this," she said. "It is a collection of human art, music, poetry, and stories. Not about war, not about fighting, about everything else." Solon took the chip carefully, as if it were precious. Everything else. "Yes, about love, about loss, about hope, about getting up every time we fall down, about finding beauty in the darkness, about choosing to be kind when it would be easier to be cruel." She looked at him with warm eyes. "We are not just warriors, Solon. We are survivors. And surviving means more than just staying alive. It means learning to live." She touched his shoulder gently. "Share it with your people. Let them see what humanity truly is. Maybe it will help you understand why we came." Solon held the data chip close. "I will share it, I promise." The human fleet began to depart that evening. One by one, the ships powered up their engines and prepared for the long journey home. But they did not all leave. 12 ships remained, their crews volunteering to stay behind as a permanent defense force. Admiral Park stood with Ambassador Telos one last time before boarding his shuttle. "We will leave these ships to protect you," the Admiral said, "and we will return if you ever need us again. You are under human protection now, Ambassador. That means something." Telos bowed deeply. "We will honor this gift. We will remember." The Admiral shook his hand, that strange human gesture of friendship. Then he boarded his shuttle and was gone. As the eternal dawn broke orbit and turned toward Earth, Telos watched it go. Stood beside him, her light patches glowing softly. "The galaxy will be different now," she said. "Yes," Telos agreed. "The conquered is already asking questions. Every species wants to know about the humans. They are afraid but also curious. Some want alliances. Some want nothing to do with them. But everyone knows that the galaxy has changed." He turned to look at the remaining human ships, still circling Prime like protective guardians. "We sent a message into the darkness," Telos said softly. "We hoped someone would answer, and they came, not as we expected, not as anyone expected, but they came." Smiled, "They expected aid, not Armada." Telos laughed softly. It felt good to laugh again. "No," he said, "they certainly did not expect that." The stars continued to shine overhead. Somewhere across the vast distances of space, humanity flew home, ready to answer the next call for help, and they stood beneath their peaceful sky, no longer afraid. They were not alone anymore. None of them were. The galaxy had changed forever, and at its heart was a small, blue, dangerous world called Earth, and a species that had learned the greatest lesson of all. When someone calls for help, you answer. No matter what.